Hi, this is Kevin at the Virtual Planetarium at Raritan Valley Community College. Welcome to our weekly Star Talk. Today we're going to be talking about our sun. But before we do that, let's talk about our upcoming moon phases. We have a first quarter moon on September 13th. We have a full moon on September 20th. And then the last quarter moon is going to be on September 28th. Speaking of the moon, check out this cool shot we caught the other evening. This was at around 7:45 at night. And we can see Venus and a very small crescent moon. Venus is the bright dot over on the left side of the picture, and then the moon is that little smiley face crescent that we see on the right side. And I just thought it was really neat to share this picture, and just wanted to remind you to keep looking west after sunset. Venus is getting higher and higher up in the sky, and it's getting easier to see, as we can see in this picture right here. Alright, like I said, today we're going to be talking about our sun. Specifically, we're going to be talking about sunspots, solar flares, and the solar cycle. Why? Well, because the sun has been kind of boring for this last year and a half, but solar activity is finally starting up again, so yay, let's talk about it. Now, before we get started, I need to remind you all to never look directly at the sun. It is never safe to look directly at the sun unless you have proper protection like eclipse glasses. These are not the same as sunglasses. Remember, looking at the sun without protection could blind you in like a matter of seconds, so nobody wants that. I'm going to put a link in the description for safe ways to view the sun, and one of the safest ways is actually a projection method. This is something you can do at home. Again, the instructions are going to be online, but basically you take like binoculars and you don't look through them. Definitely do not look through them. But what you do is you shine the sunlight through them onto a piece of paper. And then the sun's picture actually projects on the piece of paper, and there you can see it safely. You'll have to find the right distance so the picture is focused. But again, you don't look through the binoculars because there you'll definitely blind yourself in less than a second, and you don't want to do that. Here we have a video of one of these projection devices. This is called a sun spotter, which is a specialized projection device for the sun. And this was taken last week where we were looking at a few sunspots, and you can see the clouds rolling over the sun, which is pretty cool. But again, we have the same idea. The picture of the sun is projected onto a piece of paper, and that's where you can see it safely. If you don't want to do either of these, there are also resources online for viewing the sun in real time through a telescope in space. This picture I have up right now is from the Solar Dynamics Observatory, which is in outer space observing the sun, and it updates every few minutes, so it's really cool to be able to see that. I'm going to put the link for this in the description as well. Now, back to the fun stuff. Let's talk about sunspots. Well, what are these sunspots that I keep mentioning? Well, sunspots are cooler areas of the sun's photosphere that are caused by disturbances in the magnetic field of the sun. Basically, these cooler areas look darker than the surrounding areas, and that's why we can tell them apart. Now, they look darker because they're cooler, but in reality, these are still really hot areas of the sun, which means they're still really, really bright. The surface of the sun, that yellow area we see right there, is at about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But sunspots, these little spots that we see down at the corner here, are only about 6,000 degrees. And I say only, and that's still really hot. These spots look dark because everything else around them is just so bright. But if you were to take that sunspot, remove it, and put it out in space, it would actually still shine because of how hot it still is. Now, this little sunspot right here looks really small, but it's actually about the size of the Earth. And it looks really small in the sun because, well, that's just how big the sun is. Now, you might be wondering, are sunspots rare? Well, yes and no. It all depends on where the sun is in its cycle. Now, wait, the sun has a cycle? Yes, it does. The sun has something called the solar cycle, which I know is not very original. But this solar cycle repeats every 11 years or so. It has what's called a solar minimum and a solar maximum. Lately, the sun has been super quiet because it reached solar minimum in 2020. And as you might expect, minimum is when there is less activity. That means that there are less sunspots, less flare, and less stuff going on its surface in general. Here's a clip showing the sun from September 5th to September 8th of last year, and we see that there is absolutely nothing going on in the surface of the sun. You can see that it's turning because the sun keeps rotating no matter what, but you can see that there's absolutely no sunspots or nothing fun going on its surface. Now, in contrast, here we have a video of the same dates this year, which was last week, and we can see that there's some sunspots that are starting to show up again, and that's because we are starting to move away from solar minimum, so the sun's activity is going to be going higher and higher up until we reach solar maximum that's going to be in about 5 years. And to give you an example of what it might look like during solar maximum, here we have the same dates in 2014, which was when the sun was around its solar maximum. Now, why is there a solar cycle? Well, we don't know for sure. Scientists are still trying to figure that out, but we do know that it's tied to its magnetic field. Around solar maximum, the sun's magnetic field actually flips, and it's the magnetic field that controls all these crazy phenomena happening on the surface of the sun, which is pretty cool. Now, besides sunspots, the sun's magnetic field causes other fun stuff. You've all probably heard of solar flares and coronal mass ejections, or CME for short. And these are all, again, caused by the magnetic field. These happen when particles from the sun actually get flung off by the magnetic field and go out into the solar system. Sometimes these particles might hit the Earth. And when the charged particles hit the Earth, it can cause all sorts of funky things. Most famously, and most innocently, we get the northern lights when these particles interact with our magnetic field. Here we have a little picture of what they look like. However, when we get bigger events, it can actually cause problems when they interfere with our electronics and our satellites in space. So as cool as solar maximum might be, it does have us a little bit on edge when it happens because we don't know when a big storm is going to hit us and ruin a lot of our electronics. We wouldn't like that. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Hope you learned something new. Again, you should never look directly at the sun without proper protection. If you don't have solar eclipse glasses, just don't try and look at the sun because you're going to blind yourself and nobody wants that. You can try to do the projection method if you feel confident, but if you don't want to try that, again, we have a lot of online resources. I'm going to put the link for the Solar Dynamics Observatory website down in our description, and that page is actually really cool because it cycles through different wavelengths of the sun so you can see the sun in different colors, and that shows you different features of the sun as well, which is fun. If you like this video, be sure to give us a like, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. We're going to be doing a new video every week. Once again, thank you for joining us and hope you have a great week.